Welcome to Catholic Ed for All, your weekly insight into topics of special education in Catholic schools. My name is Dr. Raul Escarpio, and I invite you to join me each week as we learn how to be more inclusive in Catholic schools and continue to live out St. John Paul II's message of open wide the doors to Christ. Many thanks go out to RCL Benziger, who is generously sponsoring this podcast. RCL Benziger enriches the worldwide Catholic community by providing the most engaging and highest quality resources, programs, and services rooted in the rich and diverse tradition of the Catholic faith. And now, on to our show. On the first show for Season 2, I am joined by Sister Dale McDonald, Director of Public Policies for the National Catholic Educational Association. Hello, Sister Dale. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Raul. Good morning. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Sister. Sister, can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Fine. I'm a sister of the Presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It's located in New York. I've been in education all my life. This September, I'll be celebrating my 60th anniversary as a Presentation sister. I have been in elementary school education, high school education, university education, and then working for the National Catholic Educational Association. I've been here 23 years, I'm completing in this role.
So what led you to NCEA?
I was a high school history teacher, American history, politics, government, and I was always interested in political issues. And when this opportunity presented itself, I was happy to begin the position and explore, where it could go.
Fantastic. So let's explore this, Sister. Let's explore. Let's talk a little bit about ESSA, an idea. So I know that that's your strong suit. So let's talk a little about what ESSA means to our audience real quick.
All right, ESSA, or the Every Student Succeeds Act, is the federal education program's latest revision. This began in 1965 as the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA, and each reauthorization gets another name. And so NCLB was replaced, the No Child Left Behind was replaced by the Every Student Succeeds Act. And since its inception, Catholic schools have participated in programs under the various titles. Our students and our teachers are provided for in certain titles under ESSA, as well as in some of the other federal programs. Under ESSA, we participate in programs that help the students at risk of failure through Title I services. The Title IIA services provide professional development to teachers based on what their student needs are and what the teachers have to learn and experience and so on to help their students succeed in particular areas. Title IIIA is the title that provides for English learners and immigrant students learning English. And that's help for teachers to be able to teach and then for students. And then Title IV, as it is now under ESSA, is a reincarnation of several of the other programs that provide assistance for healthy environments, safe and healthy schools, for technology, and for overall effective education. And so those titles we participate in various ways. And
Okay.
under ESSA, you work through your local public school district, who is the fiduciary agent for that, and you receive goods and services. We never receive direct money.
Is there an accountability piece that is involved with Every Student Succeeds Act and Catholic schools?
Yes, it varies depending on the program. In the Title I programs, the district provides direct services. So the accountability is from the person who is providing the services to the LEA and to parents, obviously, for kids succeeding. For some of the other programs, the accountability piece is built into the consultation process when the private school official negotiates with the district for those particular services that would help their students succeed.
Excellent. Excellent. That's great information. And then the other piece is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act that was created in the 1970s. And can you talk a little bit about that for our listeners?
Right, that has been reauthorized several times. We're working
Yes.
under the latest one. In this program, public school students are entitled to what they need for improving their ability to, receive an appropriate education. A free, appropriate public education is what's guaranteed by IDEA to students. If a student's parents decide to place the student in a private school, and they're referred to in the law as parentally placed students, then those students lose their individual entitlement to FAPE. And so the way the law is structured is that all of the students in a district parentally placed with a diagnosed disability are put into a pool. And those children generate funds the way in which any public school student with a designated disability does. But the pool of money that comes from all of the students and parentally placed is then one pot of money. And from that pot of money, the district and the private schools representatives determine what's the best way to use that money. And so it may be one student with a profound disability could be served with all of it, or looking at the most effective use of the money across the spectrum. They may decide, well, then this year we'll use the money for speech improvement, or we may use it for children with specific learning disabilities, or we may use it to provide professional development to teachers on how to deal with students who have dyslexia or something of that sort. So that not all of our students receive the services that they would if they were in public school. But that's the nature of the law, and we have tried to, have that looked at over the years. But that's the congressional intent, is that parentally placed students only are entitled to be evaluated to see if they have a disability. And then from that group that's identified, certain students may be served. The rationale behind that in the early days when it was reauthorized two reauthorizations back, was that public school students receive some federal funding under IDEA, and that's probably less than 20% of what it actually takes to educate a student. And then the state and locals make up the rest. And Congress felt that that was an unfunded mandate to place on the public school districts to provide everything to the private school students who are parentally placed. So we have to work with what we have. And so not all of our students will receive services. They will receive an evaluation. And then from that evaluation, we determine, what is needed for this child to succeed, and try to make the accommodations in the private school to make up for what the public school district does not provide.
I wanted to add to your very salient points about IDEA. I was in Washington, D.C. last year as part of a legislative conference, and I know that funding has been stagnant at best for the past since the inception of the law. And I know that funding has not really grown. It's just not even grown with inflation as much as it should. So it's been difficult for funding, even at the public level. So states have had to be creative with the way they fund. But sister, one of my concerns is that, and this happens in some states and not all, when the students come in and they are federal, and let's say they go to a Catholic school, and according to their matrix score, they get X amount of money. to attend a Catholic school. There's some schools, well, there's some schools that will use that money for tuition, and or the parent will have to use that money for tuition so the student can get services, and they basically give up IEP rights or their rights under the law, as you were saying earlier. And
Right,
that's a huge concern. Granted, that doesn't happen everywhere. I'm thinking of places like Ohio that have different systems in place.
right.
When it
So Ohio and it does provide some state funding to supplement what IDEA would provide.
exactly, I know there's others.
They're really
Maybe
partial.
Boston is it
Yes.
Massachusetts might be
Yeah.
one. All
Well,
right.
New York gets some benefits too, but most states no.
No, most states no, and that's sad. And that's sad because you want a Catholic education for your son or your daughter, and we're going to give you X amount of funding, which in a way takes us to our next conversation, which is about choice. And we know that the federal government, especially Secretary DeVos, has this at the front of her agenda, and it's been difficult for her to run. How do you feel about choice, sister? And again, you don't have to speak on NCA's behalf. You could just speak on sister's behalf.
I
Uh,
can speak on NCA's behalf. I mean,
okay, okay,
NCAA,
let's go there because I'm interested about hearing this.
right? NCAA has a public policy position that we support the parent as the primary educator of the child, and that the parent should be the one to determine where the child goes to school, and if funding is required, that parents be assisted federally or locally, or privately, to attain that. A child should not be penalized for the parent's inability to afford a private education. And so
Absolutely.
we have worked on behalf of school choice, at federal level. We certainly supported, and we were active in some of the lobbying efforts and the public campaigns and so on for the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program, which is the only federally funded program for choice. And then work with some of the state areas that request our help regarding some of their choice initiatives. And we have been, trying to get more satisfaction basically for parents from the administration. The president campaigned on a $20 billion school choice program, and that has not materialized. We've, been to meetings and so on, but the unfortunate thing is that there doesn't seem to be any appetite in the Congress to take on anything that would look like a school choice program on a national level. We know that we've, spoken with people in school choice caucuses in both the House and Senate, and it's just nothing is moving
Well,
other than
and I
the
think if I may
529 last.
interrupt,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, real quick. I mean, we can say why it hasn't happened or whatever, and I think there's been a lot of muddy waters, sister, if I can use that phrase, and uncertain about the way that it should be done, and then the public school versus the private sector. When I was up in Washington, D.C., one of the big concerns was, well, it's my public money and I'm not taking it. And I know that the government campaigns on the rights of the parents, saying that it should be their choice
Right.
where they would want their children educated, and it's as simple as that. I mean, it doesn't only benefit Catholic schools. Yeah, but what about our school? What about our school? Well, maybe it'll put the onus back on the school to try to improve as best as they can. And again, that's just my 2 cents.
Right. I mean, the private schools, Catholic schools, or the private schools, I mean, they perform a public function. We educate citizens for the common good. We educate citizens to be productive members of society, contributing members of society. And, that's a public benefit. And we feel that asking for public support for that, for those who can't afford the choice, is reasonable
Well,
and
let's.
just.
I'm sorry. Continue.
That's it.
Oh, I'm sorry, sister. Just look at the Supreme Court. What happened? Was it last year with Andrew versus Colorado District? I can't. The name escapes me right now. But for those of you that don't know, it was basically a family. that with the child with autism that didn't feel that the child was making adequate progress in the public school, and then they moved the child into a private school. I don't even think it was a Catholic school. They moved them into a private school where the child made progress, and then they sued the district in Colorado where the public school district, and the court made it all the way. The case made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and in the end, the court ruled in favor of the parents and said that
Right,
that district had to pay the money. And it was a huge victory for choice because it allowed parents to become that voice and say, we know what's best for our kids. And when schools come up with and say the child is making adequate progress is not sufficient for parents. They want the
right.
child to make big gains. So I don't know if you were aware of that, but that was a huge
Yes,
case.
and in that case, it points to something, if you noticed, I talk about the children in Catholic schools, according to the law, as parentally placed.
Right.
Because if the district decides it has a child who requires special services, one child, say, who requires very particular services, perhaps in, let's say, speech, or, a child who may be deaf, or some, thing that would require a lot of resources for one or two children, the district may decide to place that child in a private facility. So the child may go to a residential school, child may go to a day school, but in a private school that you may say perhaps focuses on one particular disability. Well, that everything is paid for then. The child has FAPE. The child takes the FAPE and goes to that school. So, basically, the question is not where you go to school, but it's about who decides where you go to school.
Amen.
So if your parents decide you go to a private school, you lose FAPE. But if the district decides you can go to a private school, then you retain FAPE. And so in that case, in Colorado, the parents were arguing for two things. One was that they had a right to choose the best place for their child, and was also arguing, which the court put really public school districts on notice, is that just having the child show up and be cared for is not an adequate education.
Exactly.
So looking at, de minimis is not adequate.
And let's be honest here, when we're talking about the parents having the choice, we are the responsible bodies. Well, a parent is not going to show up to a Catholic school without the resources to educate a child with special needs and say, and the school's not going to take them. I mean, we are responsible bodies here, and we'll say, no, we can't meet the needs of the child, and that's one of the biggest arguments against it. That after a while, the schools will say, no, we can't meet their needs, and we're going to take their money anyway. No, it's not about that. It's about being responsible. And I think the biggest way that we can do this, sister, and I've had these talks with the senators at that level, is an accountability measure for the choice. But I don't think, as you say, that they're ready to talk about it right now, because the minute that you talk about it, they like go to deaf ears, or they don't have the time, or they just push it aside. I don't think we're ready to talk about that, and it's a shame, sister. It really is.
Right. Yeah. And that's both parties. It's not just one party. It's both parties on the Hill.
Right. I agree. Sister, what should teachers know in a nutshell, like about IDEA and about ESSA? And I know we could probably, and I know there's sheets that they can look at, but what's one thing that you can leave them with that they should know about each?
Well, in ESSA, there are programs that the children's parents' tax dollars pay for, and their children are entitled to be served by them. And so the school should pay attention, teachers, the principal, what are the programs that are available to your students, and how do you make best use of that? And that's whether it's direct services to the child, or it's assistance to the principal and the teachers to learn new things, to improve their bag of tricks, to be able to service various kinds of needs of students all in one place. With IDEA, the important thing I think for that is to know that your child, the children are entitled to an evaluation, to get the best evaluation you can so that you can figure out what you can do at the school level that won't be met by IDEA. So you know what the needs are, and then figure out the best way to address them. And there are ways in which IDEA can dovetail into some of the programs in ESEA. Well, ESEA doesn't focus on students with disabilities specifically. There are some of the programs where you can get services for children at risk, which may also include children with disabilities, so that, if a child has particular learning needs, there are various ways in which ESSA helps teachers learn how to diversify instruction and to be able to serve, a diverse population.
Yes, absolutely. And that is so important, sister. I just want to add one little tiny bit. Parents, please, if you're listening, get that evaluation. It's so necessary for your kids and all that, just to be able to have it, just to know what's going on immediately. All right, sister. The last question that I always ask my guests is, what should Catholic special education look like?
Well, it should be as inclusive as the resources are able to provide. It should be in the least restrictive environment. We have schools where you may have 4 students have more than moderate disabilities, where they have some time with a special resource teacher, but most time in the school. As a Catholic school, we believe ourselves to be, and we talk about ourselves as a faith community, and we embrace all. And so we're working hard to develop ways in which schools can be more inclusive with the limited resources they have.
Fantastic, sister. Fantastic. Sister, I'm a big fan of you and of your work and everything that you're doing with NCA, and I'm so grateful that you were able to take a few minutes and speak to me and speak to all of us about these very important topics that are necessary. I wish you nothing but prayers and blessings as you continue your policy advocacy for NCA, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you very much. Blessings on you and your work as well.
Thank you. God bless you. Well, that's it for this week. If this podcast was a blessing to you, can you please head over to iTunes and subscribe and give us a review or a rating? It really does help other Catholic educators find the podcast and use it as a resource. Thanks again to the amazing people at RCL Benziger for generously sponsoring this podcast. Check out their new resource for Catholic schools, Blessed Are We, Faith in Action, which enables teachers to share the love of Christ with children who have special needs. Visit rclbenziger.com to learn more. Join me again next time as we continue to advance God's kingdom by including all of God's children in Catholic schools and faith formation. Until then, this is Dr. Raul Escarpio. Thanks for listening, and may God bless your day.